Victor, Francois, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm not so sure that this is the greatest time to have this conversation because I haven't had my lunch yet, and talking chicken might make me a little bit hungry. But jokes aside, I was very surprised to learn that Ghana once had a thriving poultry industry. If you can just tell us exactly how that changed and what the situation is looking like now.
Right, thank you very much. I think poultry production started basically after we gained our independence from the colonial masters, and it was going on very well. There were policy and government interventions which were really promoting the industry. I remember between 1972 and 1974, there was a policy called Operation Feed Yourself, which means we have to consume what we produce in the country, which was a very good initiative. Then in the late 1980s, this policy of trade liberalization came to Ghana, and our government could not put in any strategic plan to protect the local industry. So they started bringing in this imported frozen chicken from outside. Gradually, by the year 1990, the percentage rate for the market share was about 70%, and it went up to 90% in the year 2013. As I speak with you now, I can say that we are having less than 5% share of the market. Yeah, this is very serious, and it's creating a lot of unemployment on the people. Social lives are very bad, poverty, and all these things. When people are not employed, when there's no money in the people's pocket, they also have to find means to survive. So it turns out to be crimes and other things in the country.
Right, so a lot of ripple effects. So essentially you're saying that 95% of the chickens that Ghanaians eat are imported?
Imported, yeah, exactly.
Or dumped?
Yeah, exactly.
Francois, we were speaking just before the program started. The South African poultry industry, it seems like you've quietened down. So I thought perhaps the situation had been solved with regards to the EU dumping, but clearly not.
Unfortunately, the correct measures have still not been taken. Because unless measures are taken, for instance, to adjust tariffs to fight dumped product, we're not against imports, but dumped products, and predatory pricing from foreign competition, unless we have the kind of sanitary rules and health rules that apply to South African producers also applying to imported product. You're going to find what we presented yesterday to the EU, where we showed them a package that says this chicken could be, and it lists about 7 countries. So it's a real health risk, because if there's a problem, you don't know where to go to find the origin. And
I've interacted with a couple of the chicken bosses in their fights. I'm just trying to understand how significant our problem is. Is it like in Ghana, whereby the majority of the chicken that South Africans eat is in fact from elsewhere?
Imported chicken is the biggest producer, in a sense, of chicken in South Africa. 26% of the volume in South Africa is imported chicken. In the EU, on the other hand, only 6% of the volume they import themselves, and yet South Africa is a far more competitive producer than the EU. The EU is highly expensive, but they don't allow willy-nilly imports at the wishes of anyone who wants to dump product there. So we simply want to apply the same rules. We think an adjustment is required and necessary without breaking trading ties.
Victor, how does South Africa prevent the situation that happened in Ghana from materializing here?
Well, I think that's the main reason why I'm here to discuss with my counterparts here, that great caution must be taken and steps must also be taken to reduce these imports, because it starts gradually, but before you realize it has taken all the market. So it's about time that South African Poultry Farmers Association and the other colleagues come together to fight this dumping that is going on. Because you may not know, it's now 26%. Before you realize it's gone to 40%, and it may be like what we are experiencing in Ghana.
Victor, there was a time ITEC was involved, government was involved, your association was involved trying to find a way forward. I mean, what happened to those talks? So where do things stand now?
Well, the government has very sensibly put together a task team to address the problem, involving trade unions, involving business, involving other government departments. We have not yet heard what the outcome is, because the government has not yet announced the decisions taken as a result of that. And we think it's rather urgent now for the government to come out and announce the measures so that there could be a measure of stability in the industry in South Africa. And then we've also had discussions with Victor. It's his idea, and he's taking the lead on it, to say perhaps we need an African response to the EU taking over markets in a very unfortunate way.
So this is a problem not only in Ghana or South Africa, but continentally.
Yeah.
Indeed, and there's some very good examples of countries that have taken steps. So, for instance, Zambia has a thriving chicken industry, but that's because they took some very harsh measures to stop product being dumped in the country.
I mean, we've got favorable trade agreements with the US for Africa that allows them to bring some goods here, allows us to bring goods there. I mean, to what extent is the US a problem in dumping, and perhaps even Brazil?
Well, I think that trade policy is very unfair because they have every right to bring whatever they want to Ghana, to Africa. But we cannot send anything there. So always they are on the advantage, because you'll be signing partnership with them, but you know, it will be a kind of a bully, always suppressing the African countries. So this kind of trade agreements and other things, I don't think it's working properly.
FairPlay thinks that the way in which the South African government has shown backbone to find an equitable relationship in terms of trade in chicken with the US is actually a good example of what they should be doing with the European Union. The US is constrained as to the amount that they can bring in every year as
and
part of the
last I checked, they weren't even meeting
agreement.
that quota.
And they're not even meeting that quota. So we think all we're asking is let the South African government announce the measures that the task force has recommended. Let those measures be implemented in a very vigorous way, and perhaps then engage the European Union with a similar approach to what has been done with the US, and incidentally do the same with Brazil. And it's not about stopping trade. We're in favor of trade, but we say the rule of law must be followed in spirit as well as in law, and apply to everyone, not only to South Africa or Africa.
Or Africa, right. But I must ask the EU's stance on this, because last time we chatted to them, they were of the opinion that, in fact, they are not dumping, and they were of the opinion that it was perhaps South African chicken producers or African chicken producers not being efficient enough in their production process.
Our view at FairPlay, after our engagement with the EU yesterday, which was the first, by the way, since we started, although we've written them letters and asked for engagement, so we're very happy that at last they're engaging. However, they seem to hide behind bureaucratic obduracy. There is very much an attitude that says, well, the rules are the rules, we've made the deal, and all you have to do is listen to us. Do what we tell you to do. That kind of mercantile colonialism, I think, belongs in the past. It shouldn't be part of the future.
Belongs in the past. But Victor, if I can bring it back to you, I mean, you've spoken about how Ghana practically doesn't have a chicken producing industry. And here, we do know that our chicken industry is one of the largest employers. I mean, what potential does Ghana have for a turnaround, and potentially other African countries have for a turnaround, if the right measures are put in place? And I'm talking about potential in terms of job creation, in terms of economic growth even.
Yeah, definitely. If the situation is turned around, it's going to create more jobs, because we've done our calculations and we've realized that poultry alone can create over 200,000, 300,000 jobs along the value chain. So if we are not allowed to produce, all these people will continue to be unemployed, because looking at over 500,000 people sitting down unemployed, I mean, you know, it's very serious. But if you look at the value chain from the maize producer, from the soya producer, from the transport, those transporting the inputs from various places to the feed millers, from the farm and the processors, the marketers, the storage, and the packaging. You know, it has a very long value chain, and every value chain is potential of creating a lot of jobs over there.
Mm-hmm. And where to from here? Just quickly.
Well, we're going to rally Africa. Mm. We're going to seek to outlaw instead of merely frown upon dumping in the long run. And in the short term, we are going to keep begging the government in South Africa to announce the measures that the task team recommended. Well,
do keep us informed. Thanks so much for your time, gentlemen. That was Victor Adjei. He's the chairman of the Ghana Poultry Association and the founder of FairPlay, Francois Baird.